Okay. How does this keep happening? Here we are yet again with another indie game releasing in the same week on the same day as a highly anticipated AAA release, though the type of anticipation widely depends from person to person, and it comes out and it just absolutely crushes them. Slay the Spire 2 has had 7 times the amount of players as Marathon. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you guys that I think that Marathon is some failure. I think that the game did within expectations of most games. Problem is that Marathon isn't most games. It's one of Sony's biggest bets. It's coming from a studio that's behind some of the most prolific first-person shooters in the entire industry. It's got a ton of money and a ton of marketing behind it. Oh, a lot of marketing. And the real question is going to come down to whether or not this is enough for Sony. Whether or not this is the number that Sony was looking for. These two games have had a lot of people talking. A lot of people are using it as an opportunity to slam Marathon, showing that this is the way, this game has totally failed. On the other end of that, you have people that are deflecting, trying to say that the two games are not comparable because, well, they're just not the same. And I've also seen a lot of people try to write off Slay the Spire 2's success as just another roguelike. What I think all this discussion does is ignore some really incredibly important questions. Who is playing these two games? Why are they choosing one over the other? And what are they chasing? That's what we're going to find out today. The last couple of weeks, honestly, the last couple of months have been kind of insane for games. There's been plenty of drama that we'll be getting into, but man, gamers have been genuinely eating so good recently. We need to take the time to appreciate that. February had Neo 3, which ate up a lot of my personal time, Eugenics as well, from the creator of Binding of Isaac. Then we got Resident Evil Requiem, which, man, that game has just been so good. I just finished my second playthrough of that. We also got a steady stream of information coming out around Crimson Desert, and honestly, it looks like that game's actually going to be delivering on its promises, and man, if it does, oh boy, that's going to be a problem. Now we have March, and Pokemon Pokopia launches, which is genuinely a good Pokemon game. PlayStation launches Marathon, which seems to have found an audience that genuinely enjoys it. But the player numbers definitely leave a lot of questions on the table. Questions that get a lot louder when on the exact same day, it is entirely eclipsed by Slay the Spire 2. The comparison of these two games flooded social media almost immediately. Marathon peaked at about 88,000 concurrent players. It lost momentum over the weekend, something that we normally don't see, and it never broke over 80K again. Slay the Spire 2, however, launched to over 175,000 players, and it kept climbing day after day, eventually hitting a peak of 570,000 concurrent players. It is now the 20th most played game in Steam history. These are absolutely absurd numbers. Now, I've seen a lot of people trying to estimate how many copies Marathon has sold. That's the game that most people are the most curious about right now. And, well, most of the math that I've seen has been pretty flawed, with people overcomplicating it more than they need to. The simplest way for you guys to be able to gauge how a game is done is just look for a game with similar launch performance and see what that studio reported. Marathon peaked at around 88,000 concurrent players, and the closest comparable across all platforms is actually Dragon Age the Veilguard, which actually had more players, about 1,000 players higher than them. EA reported that game had engaged 1.5 million players at launch, whatever that means, but Marathon is likely sitting right around there, likely just below that, or maybe just at 1 million copies sold. Now, a critical difference between these two releases that I think is really important to take notice of is that GamesIndustry.biz ran a piece noting that Slay the Spire 2 was not multi-platform. This game was only on Steam, and it has already sold over 2.8 million units based on available data, and that 43% of those sales are coming from China alone, which is a massive market. Now, I love this because this is a 10-person studio team that is making a $25 deck builder that's cracking into markets that AAA publishers are spending hundreds of millions of dollars and they can't even reach. I think this is a bit poetic that the games industry has been spending years chasing larger and larger audiences, and in that pursuit, they've managed to shrink the audience that they do have while also somehow ignoring one of the biggest ones in the entire world. Even Megacrit, the developers of the game, couldn't help themselves. They jumped onto Twitter posting, "Congratulations to Marathon team on their launch. Don't let a small indie passion project pass you by just because Slay the Spire 2 is out." Man, absolutely brutal. Guys, Megacrit is a 10-person studio that dropped a single trailer announcing their early access launch. Bungie is an 800-developer studio backed by PlayStation, throwing everything at the wall, and this wasn't even close. I mean, PlayStation is known for spending heavily on their marketing, but this might be one of their most aggressive campaigns that I have ever seen. Honestly, I would not be surprised if they spent over $200 million just on their marketing campaign. They sponsored nearly every content creator under the sun. They ran a full suite of ads. They built out an ARG experience so that players could hunt down lore and real clues and stuff like that in real life. They have an entire song that was written and recorded by Poppy, and they ran an advertisement presenting the game's prosthetics and shells as real technology to prank unsuspecting guests. Now, honestly, I'm not even going to throw shade at any of this other than the money that they spent, but a lot of this stuff was genuinely cool. I think it gets the community involved almost immediately, and it all fits the theme of the game really well, but you guys just got lapped 7 times by a studio that's now walking back their own trash talk because they look like the bully for outperforming you. All this does is prove that money can buy attention, but not interest. PlayStation spent a lot of money here, and the market just didn't care. When you look at the reception of both of these games, I think the outcome makes a lot of sense. Slay the Spire 2 is a sequel to one of the most beloved and widely played indie games in the entire scene. It's $25, and even less if you actually buy the first one. They give you a discount on it. The studio has a great reputation, and every day more and more people are choosing to actively support indie developers. It's a known quantity in every sense. Marathon, on the other hand, is a pile of uncertainty. It's a $40 live service game dropping into a free-to-play market, which honestly, I don't really think would be much of a deal breaker if it wasn't for the fact that Bungie has spent years thoroughly torching their own reputation. Egregious monetization, removing paid content that players had already paid for, repeated controversies over stolen artwork, and essentially sacrificing Destiny 2 on the altar of this new game, turning their own audience against them in the process. It's literally the meme of the shiny new favorite. And even with the game out now, I still don't think that Marathon is a known quantity. I mean, PlayStation themselves don't actually seem to be completely sure of what the game is. They've been asking reviewers to hold off their coverage until late March when Bungie plans to release the Cryo Archive, a raid-like scenario reminiscent of Destiny that some believe is the final piece that's going to make the whole experience click. The argument being that judging the game without it just isn't a complete picture, and my question is, well then why did you guys sell an incomplete experience? Look, asking reviewers to hold off is only going to build distrust. It's going to make players feel like this game is getting preferential treatment that it wouldn't be getting otherwise. And honestly, those players would be right if critics are either delaying their coverage or carving out caveats for content that doesn't even exist yet. Well, 1, that's unfair, and 2, that is useless to anybody that is trying to decide whether or not to buy the game right now. And even if the Cryo Archive is that genuinely transformative, all you're really doing is telling players that it's going to get better later. Content that a new or casual player is unlikely to see for a long time, if ever, especially given how much more demanding Marathon is and how much more competitive Marathon is compared to something like Arc Raiders. What players need to know right now is what the game feels like on a day 1 or day 2 basis, not what this game is going to feel like a month from now. Every single sale starts with the first day, and every single return happens in just a couple hours. What are we doing? What I think everybody is missing in this conversation is that players do not need a complete picture. All they need is a snapshot, and most people have already made up their minds on this game before it even came out. I think that's exactly what the numbers are telling you right now. Marathon's audience didn't grow over the weekend. It declined and then stabilized. The people that were on the fence gave the game a shot and didn't come back. The people who are playing it right now are the ones that were always going to be playing it. I took the headphones off. It's hot as hell in here, so hopefully this still sounds good. Contrary to popular belief, I actually do not think that Marathon is a failed game, nor do I think that it's necessarily an objectively bad game. And honestly, I also think that it has dodged out on being Concord 3. Kind of. All this depends on whether or not PlayStation sees this level of success and says, yes, this is acceptable. This is what we were looking for. They have to see the numbers and say that it's worthy of their investment, their initial investment, and also their future investment. And as we have learned multiple times, many times by now, these companies are not necessarily fair when it comes to the expectations that they put onto these games. And this isn't even just talking about the right now. We're also talking about when this game starts to lose players, when this game starts to cool down a little bit, when the content creators walk away from it for a while and they're not sponsored anymore, when there's a content lull. And I saw Shroud talking about it, and he had said, oh, well, they put too much money into it. PlayStation wouldn't abandon it even if it had 3 players. Brother, didn't you have a game that also failed? Come on, guy. I think that this game has found its core audience, and I think that audience is sticking with it. And I think that this is a real extraction shooter, which kind of ends up being a problem. It does make sure that that audience is incredibly passionate, and it also does at the same time make that this audience is probably going to be much smaller than Sony probably originally thought it was going to be. This game is incredibly difficult. It's not very forgiving. And when you have this raid style content that's being touted as the end game, well, it's going to be really hard for a lot of players, the wide audience, the majority audience, to be able to enjoy that content when they're constantly losing their stuff all the time. And I can't imagine that that raid is going to be all that fun if you do not have some of the best equipment available to be able to take it on. Now, I don't know if Sony is okay with this game being a Helldivers 2. A game that is hot in a season, but colder for the year. That's something that we're going to have to wait to find out. Genuinely, I'm not shitting on Marathon, okay? Like, good Lord, the amount of people for like the last week that I have had that have been flowing into both my DMs, on my comments on Twitter, and in my videos that have been trying to call me out thinking that I'm trying to attack their game. Look, it has been some of the most insecure behavior that I think that I have ever seen. But I realize something in that. That insecurity has a source. It's coming from somewhere. That insecurity is a self-defense, and I think that it's something that is working to both the negative and also the benefit of Marathon, but also the same for Slay the Spire. For me personally, I've been trying to give Marathon a fair shot, and I'll be honest with you guys, that has been a struggle as somebody who is predisposed to hating Bungie, but the game does have things that I love. For as jaded as I am as a Destiny player who lost content that I paid for, I cannot deny that this game feels incredible to play. The movement, the gunplay, their take on science fiction, the worlds that they build, all of that stuff. That's all still here. That's all still Bungie that's showing up in Marathon. But Marathon, man, this game is so over-designed. It's like one of those pretentious fashion shows where it's all fashion and no function. The game looks incredible. It drips with a distinct art style that you genuinely cannot find anywhere else. And then you open a menu and your brain just starts to melt. Information, items, purchases all scattered in different ways that make the game just so needlessly confusing. I get that buying specific items from specific factions is lore accurate, but I should be able to sort this stuff by what I actually need. Meds, ammo, whatever else, without feeling like I need to go on a damn treasure hunt. There's no crafting in this game, so outside of that's a blue item, that's a green item, there's no real framework for any decision-making that you're making out in the field. Players and NPCs are blurring together in the moment. Sound feels like it's tight in some areas and then loose in others, which is just creating this low-grade, constant confusion that just never really lifts from me. And the neon colors everywhere. Again, I understand it's on theme, but your eyes are drawn to nothing. Basically, your eyes are looking at just big random red objects and pink objects and yellow objects. It's just all visual noise. Now, the problem that I'm having is that I don't know how much of that is the game and how much of that is me. I have never had this happen before, but I cannot tell if these things genuinely bother me or if it's just that I have nothing left to give. I don't trust Bungie. I'm exhausted with live service. The rate that these games launch and die every single year has me just completely tuned out of the whole thing. Then I sat down with Slay the Spire 2, and yes, I know that these games are entirely different, but the feeling is not different. Playing a game shouldn't feel this different. I was immediately in a flow state. Every single mechanic was so curious and inviting. The tooltips were explaining themselves right there on the card. The menus were so simple to be able to navigate. I'm getting that little hit of reward every time I take down an elite or something else clicks. I just couldn't stop. And when I finally put the game down, I didn't feel exhausted. I didn't feel like I was committed to anything because I knew that that game would be there whenever I came back to it. There is this simple bliss in that simple sense of security. This is something that I think returns to what a lot of classic games used to feel like, where the experience was all about discovering things on your own and taking your time, where the tools were simple, but everything just felt limitless. And then I started wondering, maybe there's a lot of other people that are chasing that exact same feeling. Something that the games industry just hasn't come to terms with yet is that while they love gambling on live service games because the upside is insane, one successful game is going to effectively just make them immune to all the failures that they had before, wiping the slate clean. What they don't account for is that while those failures may not hurt them, they absolutely hurt the players. Live service games ask a lot from us. Marathon is not just some $40 purchase. It is a game that is going to continue to ask for more and more money, more faith in the studio, more faith in a roadmap, more faith in a future that is genuinely unclear. And that ask lands a lot differently when players have watched so many of these games just disappear. Every time a live service game shuts down, real people get hurt by it. And I'm not just talking about the developers in this instance, because while we can sit around and we can meme all day, and while a lot of these games we can say are not made for you and I, or honestly the vast majority of people, there are a few people who genuinely do enjoy these games, and the number of those players is just accruing over time. I guarantee that there are people who bought skins in Multiverses, in The Cycle Frontier, in Concord, in Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, in Highguard. Actually, I know that's a fact because I just recently jumped into a match of Highguard just to grab some footage before the game's eventual shutdown, and there were people that were wearing paid skins. People who cared, people who were invested, and that all just gets taken away because these games are not hitting a benchmark that has nothing to do with them. What that's done over time is it split the audience in two. You have people who will go nowhere near a game like Marathon because they don't know what it is, they don't know what it will become, and they don't want to find out the hard way. And then you have people who are genuinely enjoying it, and they're terrified that it's going to suffer the same fate as a lot of these other games. So they go out there, they start defending it like crazy from any and all criticism just to try to keep it alive. That's how you end up with these wild swings where you have these devout players that are preaching the word on one side and everybody else that's skeptical on the other. It's also how you end up with a launch that genuinely you can't really call a success or failure. It's just kind of sitting in limbo, which is exactly where Marathon is sitting right now. Now, on the other hand, you have Slay the Spire 2, which isn't asking you for anything beyond the $25 that you had already spent on it like any other single-player game. These developers have already come out publicly stating that they are microtransaction haters, a stark contrast to basically everybody else in the industry. They have a positive reputation. They have no barrier to entry. I'm pretty sure you can run this game on a potato. So, of course, this game got 7 times the players. I posted on Twitter celebrating the launch of the game, and I saw somebody had responded, to be fair, this is the most casual of casual games. Literally anybody could play it. Like that was supposed to be some criticism or some equalizer. And I said, to be fair, that smells like success because what they're describing as the negative, low barrier to entry, accessible to everybody, no steep learning curve that's going to keep people out. That's exactly why more than 2.8 million people bought it almost immediately. The games industry keeps trying to lock players down, stretching out these games and their play time and their attention and all these different things beyond what any player can realistically give any of these guys. And it's just not working. Slay the Spire 2, it's not going anywhere. It doesn't need to hold 100 million thousand concurrent players just to be able to justify its existence. It already has made its money cleanly from a $25 purchase and no servers to maintain. And all they got to worry about is just keep building on the game from its early access while it's already a smashing success. Megacrit didn't have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing or anything else, which means that they just basically get all of the money in return that they spent. And it's an enormous payoff for these guys. They get to keep making games, and the game itself just sits there, permanent, waiting for whoever wants it. Next week, next year, 5 years from now, you cannot say that about a lot of these live service games. I think that permanence is a form of trust, and trust is something that is in very short supply in the games industry. When I look at how a lot of these indie games are getting support and they're just snowballing year after year with every single one of these releases seeming to land harder than the last, I don't think that that's people that are just discovering good games. I think that's a signal. Players are tired. They're tired of the indifference towards the future of their hobby. They're tired of games disappearing, tired of money that they're spending on something that is just being taken away, tired of being asked to put faith in studios that just haven't earned it. And every single time they open their wallet up for a Megacrit over a Bungie, they're saying so. I had to motivate myself to play Marathon. I could not peel myself away from Slay the Spire 2. Damn, is that game addicting. Once you start unlocking stuff, once you start figuring out new builds for some of the characters, I played the first game. I think I beat it in like 50 hours or something like that. I got 10 hours into this one. I'm probably just going to burn straight through it. I have a problem with roguelikes. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Once I'm in, I don't come out. It's mostly because of the fact that, like, I don't know if you guys run into this, but when you play roguelikes, like, they all play so differently. There's that initial adjustment phase that you kind of got to get over, and once you get past that, you're kind of locked into it. You know, I saw this guy post on Twitter. This had me dying. And he had said that I am a indies good, AAA bad grifter. These people have lost the meaning of that term. It is forever gone. And When did supporting indies over billion-dollar AAA companies turn into a grift? That's what I would like to know. But I'll tell you guys what I told him, and I'll say it proudly again. I am a natural-born hater, baby. I am somebody that is jaded by an industry that left me behind, and I have no problem with championing an industry that I see that's trying to bring it back. Am I picking sides? You fucking better bet I am. You know, I don't want Marathon to fail. I see that people really like the game. And while I definitely have a jaded history, I can still see that there's some of that Bungie magic that's being squeezed out of it in some way. And I would kind of like to see them try to iterate on that. The question just becomes whether or not that's what Sony wants, whether this game's success is what Sony sees as a success. Now, the one thing that I will say is it does seem like Sony did just greenlight another project with the company, so maybe that means all clear. I don't know. I'm still going to try to give the game another fair shot. I need to try to play it with people and stuff like that too, but so far, I've just been bouncing straight off the game every single time I try it. Now, the other thing I'm going to say is, in times of uncertainty, people look for certainty. People look for something that they can find security in. And right now, in the games industry, honestly, in all walks of life, I think a lot of people are just feeling really uncertain right now. So when you look at a game that you can just buy one time, a game that you can afford, most importantly, that has a fixed future, it makes a lot more sense to be able to invest in something like that than something that you just can't see the future for. Doesn't make a lot of sense for these players to want to invest in live service right now. I think people have kind of had enough. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, follow me on YouTube, subscribe to the channel if you haven't for whatever reason. That doesn't even make any actual sense. Make sure you guys comment down below and like the video. Like it twice. Is that possible? No, if you like it again, you'll unlike it. Don't do that. Just like it once. One time. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. Peace.
Family, 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 family.